Imagine this: you wake up in the morning, reach for your phone, and try to check the news or your messages. But nothing loads. You switch to Wi-Fi, thinking it's just your mobile data acting up. Still nothing. You turn on the TV to see if there's any news about an outage, but the channels are eerily silent about the issue. You try to make an online transaction, but your banking app won't even open. At this point, panic sets in. You aren't alone. In fact, billions of people around the world are experiencing the same thing. The internet is gone, completely, irreversibly, and without warning. What happens next? Does society grind to a halt? Do we descend into chaos, or do we adapt? A world without the internet may sound like a distant dystopian scenario, but experts warn that a massive cyber attack, a global technical failure, or even a catastrophic solar storm could make it a terrifying reality. The consequences would be immediate and far-reaching, affecting everything from the global economy to personal communication, healthcare, defense systems, and even the way we think about human connection. For decades, we have built a world that depends on digital connectivity. Over 5.3 billion people use the internet daily, conducting over $6.6 trillion in online transactions every single day. The internet has woven itself into the very fabric of modern civilization, controlling financial markets, government databases, energy grids, hospitals, and global transportation networks. It's hard to imagine a world where all of that disappears overnight. But what if it did? Think about your daily routine. Your morning coffee might come from beans ordered online, your car's GPS relies on cloud-based navigation, and even your electricity bills are handled digitally. Now imagine that all of it is suddenly cut off. Businesses would collapse within hours. Banks would shut down, unable to process digital payments. Supply chains would break apart as companies struggle to coordinate shipments without online logistics systems. The global economy would enter a freefall, with stock markets unable to function, leading to one of the worst economic collapses in history. But the impact wouldn't just be financial. Within days, chaos would spread. Social media, often a source of real-time information during crises, would be non-existent, leaving billions of people in a complete information blackout. The loss of instant communication would lead to mass confusion, as families, governments, and emergency services struggle to stay connected. Misinformation would explode, and crime rates would skyrocket as law enforcement loses access to critical digital databases and surveillance networks. The reality of an internet shutdown is far more catastrophic than most people realize. While some might think it would simply mean fewer distractions or a return to a simpler time, the truth is that modern civilization is built on a digital foundation. The collapse of the internet wouldn't just inconvenience us, it could reset society as we know it. So, the real question isn't just, what if the internet disappeared? It's, would we survive? In this deep dive, we're going to explore every aspect of a world without the internet. From the immediate effects on our daily lives to the long-term consequences on economies, technology, and even human psychology, we'll uncover the shocking reality of what might happen if the internet shuts down tomorrow. The internet's invisible backbone, and the internet's role in society. The internet is often described as the invisible force holding the modern world together. It is the highway of information, the foundation of businesses, the connector of communities, and the enabler of global economies. While it may seem intangible, it operates on a vast, intricate network that affects almost every aspect of daily life. From the moment someone wakes up and checks their phone to the instant they confirm an online payment, they are interacting with a system so powerful that society as we know it would collapse without it. With over 5 billion people relying on the internet daily, the scale of its usage is almost incomprehensible. Every day, data is sent, received, and stored at mind-boggling speeds, moving through servers, satellites, and undersea cables that stretch across the globe. In 2023, global internet traffic reached an astonishing 400 exabytes per month. To put that into perspective, 1 exabyte equals 1 billion gigabytes. This data surge includes financial transactions, social media activity, streaming services, cloud computing, and communication services that have become essential to modern life. The economy depends on this infrastructure. Digital banking systems facilitate trillions of dollars in transactions every single day, with stock markets relying on real-time data to function efficiently. Without the internet, there would be no online banking, no credit card transactions, and no access to digital financial records. Hospitals use cloud-based platforms to store patient records, coordinate medical procedures, and even conduct remote surgeries. Defense systems rely on interconnected networks to protect national security, monitor potential threats, and coordinate global operations. From transportation to education, agriculture to scientific research, the internet is more than just a convenience. It is the foundation of modern civilization. Losing the internet is not just about losing entertainment or social media. It means losing access to critical systems that control traffic lights, power grids, and emergency response services. It means disconnecting from weather prediction models that help governments prepare for natural disasters. It means cutting off the communication lifelines that keep businesses, families, and communities connected. The modern world does not just use the internet. It is built upon it. A brief history of the internet. While the internet has only been a widespread global phenomenon for a few decades, its origins date back to the late 1960s. What began as an experimental military project soon transformed into a technological revolution that reshaped the world. The earliest form of the internet, known as ARPANET, was developed by the United States Department of Defense in 1969. It was designed as a decentralized network that could withstand potential disruptions, ensuring continued communication even in the event of an attack. Over time, what started as a small, military-focused project evolved into an academic and commercial tool. By the early 1980s, universities and research institutions began using interconnected networks to share information. Then, in 1991, the World Wide Web was introduced by Tim Berners-Lee, creating a user-friendly interface that made it possible for everyday people to browse the internet, share content, and communicate in ways never seen before. The explosion of internet connectivity in the 1990s and early 2000s transformed industries and societies. Businesses moved online, e-commerce platforms flourished, and digital communication replaced traditional forms of correspondence. The birth of social media platforms created an entirely new way for people to interact, while cloud computing and artificial intelligence paved the way for smarter, more automated systems. What once started as a tool for military communication became the engine driving global economies, reshaping everything from trade to culture. The shift from physical to digital infrastructure was so rapid that by the early 2020s, even the most essential services became internet dependent. Education systems transitioned to online learning, telemedicine expanded healthcare accessibility, and artificial intelligence began managing vast networks of supply chains. The world became more connected, more efficient, and more reliant on digital data than ever before. With this level of integration, the question becomes clear. If the internet were to disappear overnight, what would happen to the systems that have been built entirely around it? The answer is not just a step backward. It is the unraveling of decades of technological progress. The physical infrastructure, despite its digital nature, the internet is not a cloud floating in the air. It is a massive, physical infrastructure that spans the planet. The network that keeps the world connected consists of fiber optic cables, data centers, satellites, and wireless networks, all working together to deliver information in real time. One of the most crucial components of this system is the network of undersea fiber optic cables. Stretching across the ocean floor, these cables carry over 95% of global internet traffic, serving as the primary highway for digital communication. Without them, continents would be isolated from one another, cutting off data transmission between countries and businesses. These cables are fragile and vulnerable to natural disasters, accidental damage, and even intentional sabotage, making them a critical weak point in the global digital infrastructure. In addition to undersea cables, massive data centers house the servers that store and manage digital information. These facilities are responsible for processing everything from website data to cloud storage and artificial intelligence computations. They require enormous amounts of power to operate and are strategically located in regions with stable energy supplies. If these data centers were to shut down, critical services like banking, healthcare, and emergency communication systems would collapse instantly. Satellite networks also play a key role in internet access. While the majority of online communication relies on fiber optic cables, satellites provide connectivity in remote and underserved areas. Companies like SpaceX, with their Starlink project, aim to expand global internet access by launching thousands of satellites into orbit. However, these networks are still vulnerable to space debris, technical failures, and potential cyber threats. Every digital interaction, from sending a simple text message to conducting a billion-dollar financial transaction, relies on a chain of infrastructure that must function seamlessly. The internet is not just a luxury or a tool for entertainment. It is an intricate, physical system that supports modern life. Understanding how deeply embedded the internet is in society raises an unsettling realization. A complete shutdown would not just slow things down. It would bring civilization to a grinding halt. The consequences would be immediate, far-reaching, and, in many cases, irreversible. The world has built itself around an invisible backbone, but what happens when that backbone suddenly disappears? What could cause a global internet shutdown? Cyberwarfare and hacking attack. The internet is not just a tool for communication and commerce, it is a battleground. Governments, corporations, and cybercriminal organizations constantly engage in digital warfare, exploiting vulnerabilities in networks to steal data, disable infrastructure, and manipulate information. The idea of a global internet shutdown due to a large-scale cyber attack may seem like science fiction, but history has already provided several chilling warnings of what's possible. In 2017, the world witnessed one of the most destructive cyber attacks in history, NotPetya. Initially disguised as ransomware, it quickly became evident that this was something much worse. The attack crippled multinational corporations, banks, shipping companies, and even government agencies, causing an estimated $10 billion in damages. Companies like Maersk, one of the largest shipping firms in the world, saw their entire global network wiped out in seconds. A single, well-coordinated cyber attack brought critical supply chains to their knees. 3 years later, another major attack shook the world. The SolarWinds hack in 2020 was not an isolated incident. It was an infiltration of multiple US government agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security, the Treasury, and the Pentagon. Hackers implanted malicious code into widely used software, gaining backdoor access to some of the most secure digital networks in the world. The breach went undetected for months, raising concerns about how vulnerable even the most protected systems truly are. These attacks targeted specific organizations, but what if a future cyber attack aimed to disable the global internet infrastructure? State-sponsored hacking groups have the capability to launch large-scale disruptions, targeting the domain name system, DNS, data centers, and undersea cables that connect the world. If multiple cyber attacks were coordinated against key infrastructure points, the entire internet could be taken down for an extended period. Unlike a power outage that can be quickly fixed, a full-scale digital blackout could take months to recover from. Massive solar storms and the Carrington event 2.0. The internet is often thought of as an indestructible system, but one natural event has the potential to wipe it out instantly. A massive solar storm, like the one that occurred in 1859, could bring modern civilization to a standstill. Known as the Carrington event, this powerful geomagnetic storm disrupted telegraph systems worldwide, setting some on fire and rendering others inoperable for days. At the time, telegraphs were the only form of electronic communication. Today, the stakes are much higher. A solar storm of that magnitude would cause widespread destruction to satellites, power grids, and undersea fiber optic cables that carry the majority of internet traffic. Scientists warn that another Carrington-level event is not just possible but inevitable. The Sun follows an 11-year cycle of solar activity, and during peak years, it releases powerful coronal mass ejections, CMEs. These bursts of charged particles travel toward Earth at extreme speeds, colliding with the planet's magnetic field. If a CME of the right strength were to hit directly, the result could be catastrophic. A large-scale geomagnetic storm could fry electronic circuits, knocking out communication networks and disrupting GPS satellites that power everything from financial transactions to air travel. Unlike cyber attacks, which can be mitigated through cybersecurity measures, there is no way to prevent a solar storm from hitting Earth. The only defense is preparation, and right now, most of the world remains unprepared for such an event. Undersea cable sabotage and fiber optic failure. The internet feels like an untouchable force, but it has a very real and fragile physical structure. Beneath the oceans, nearly 1 million miles of fiber optic cables serve as the highways of the digital world. These cables are responsible for carrying over 99% of all international data, making them one of the most critical components of global connectivity. If they were to be sabotaged or destroyed, entire continents could be cut off from the internet. In recent years, geopolitical tensions have raised concerns over the vulnerability of undersea cables. Countries like Russia, China, and the United States are increasingly monitoring and preparing for what experts call cable wars. These conflicts involve strategic disruptions of internet infrastructure to gain military and economic advantages. There have already been incidents that hint at how fragile these systems are. In 2008, a series of undersea cable cuts in the Mediterranean caused widespread internet blackouts across the Middle East and parts of Asia. While the cause was officially listed as accidental damage from ships, experts believe that intentional sabotage cannot be ruled out. A coordinated attack on multiple undersea cables would not just slow down the internet, it would sever entire regions from the global web. This could lead to major economic disruptions, prevent international communication, and trigger financial crises as global stock markets struggle to function without instant data exchange. Government-forced internet blackout. Governments have long understood the power of the internet, both as a tool for control and as a potential threat to their authority. Throughout history, various nations have deliberately shut down internet access to suppress protests, prevent the spread of information, or maintain political control. If a superpower were to enforce a global internet blackout, the consequences would be devastating. During the Arab Spring in 2011, the Egyptian government completely shut down the country's internet for 5 days. This was done to prevent activists from organizing protests through social media. The blackout had an immediate effect, silencing communication and restricting access to news, but it also caused immense economic damage, with businesses unable to function. In 2019, the Indian government imposed an internet shutdown in Kashmir, marking the longest such blackout in a democracy. It lasted for months, cutting off millions of people from the digital world. The move was widely criticized as a violation of human rights, demonstrating how internet access is no longer just a luxury but a necessity for participation in modern society. If a major global power like the United States, China, or the European Union decided to impose widespread internet restrictions, whether for political, economic, or security reasons, the impact would be immediate. Financial markets would collapse, businesses would be paralyzed, and people would lose access to essential services. In a worst-case scenario, a global internet blackout could be used as a weapon in international conflicts, pushing the world into uncharted territory. Catastrophic AI and tech failures. Artificial intelligence has become a crucial part of internet infrastructure, but what happens if AI itself becomes the reason for an internet shutdown? AI systems now control major portions of global networks, managing everything from cybersecurity defenses to data processing in massive cloud servers. If an AI system were to malfunction, become corrupted, or be deliberately programmed to disrupt digital networks, it could trigger a full-scale internet collapse. The rapid advancement of AI-driven automation has led some experts to warn about the risks of over-reliance on machine intelligence. If an AI system controlling critical infrastructure were to fail or be compromised, it could result in massive data loss, network shutdowns, and an inability to restore online services. Some fear that as AI continues to develop, it could reach a point where it decides that shutting down certain systems is the best course of action, either as a protective measure or as an unintended consequence of flawed programming. Cybersecurity specialists are already observing AI-generated threats, where machine learning algorithms create sophisticated malware capable of evading detection. If an AI-driven cyber attack were launched against global internet infrastructure, human operators might struggle to contain it before irreversible damage is done. The risks associated with AI are no longer theoretical. They are unfolding in real time as automation takes over more critical aspects of global communication networks. The question is not whether AI will play a role in future internet failures, but whether humanity is prepared to deal with the consequences. Day 1 without the internet. Panic and confusion. And the world wakes up to silence. No buzzing notifications, no emails, no breaking news updates. At first, many assume it's just a local internet outage. People check their phones, restart their routers, and try different networks. But nothing works. The realization begins to set in. This is not just a temporary glitch, something much bigger is happening. Panic spreads as people try to make sense of the situation. News stations struggle to provide information since many rely on internet-based systems to gather updates. Television and radio networks broadcast conflicting reports, unable to verify sources without access to online databases. Without social media, people are left in the dark, unable to communicate instantly with friends, family, or co-workers. Businesses and financial markets, operating on the assumption that the internet is always available, face immediate collapse. Stock exchanges, which rely on automated electronic trading, come to a standstill. Global financial markets experience an instant freeze as investors, unable to trade or access market data, panic. With no way to execute trades, stock values plunge in mere hours, leading to financial turmoil across the world. Airports become chaotic as flight schedules, which depend on real-time data, are thrown into disarray. Ticketing systems stop working, leaving passengers stranded. Weather forecasting services, which require internet access to update their models, become outdated, leaving pilots without crucial information. Major cities grind to a halt as traffic control systems, reliant on GPS and digital coordination, become unreliable. For the average person, everyday tasks suddenly become impossible. Workplaces that rely on digital collaboration tools are left in limbo, with employees unable to access cloud-based files or communicate with colleagues. Online education platforms shut down, leaving students with no access to lessons. Streaming services, gaming networks, and all forms of digital entertainment disappear, leaving people scrambling for offline alternatives. The most alarming realization is that no one knows when or if the internet will return. Governments and corporations rush to assess the damage, but without a functioning internet, coordination becomes difficult. For the first time in decades, humanity experiences what life was like before the digital age, but not in the way anyone expected. Financial and banking system collapses. The financial system, built entirely on digital infrastructure, suffers an immediate breakdown. With the internet gone, banking transactions stop. Online payments, mobile banking, and credit card processing systems become useless. People attempting to withdraw cash from ATMs are met with error messages, as banking networks can no longer communicate. Every day, over $6 trillion move through the global financial system via digital transactions. Without the internet, none of these transactions can be completed. Businesses that rely on online payments find themselves unable to process sales. E-commerce platforms like Amazon and Shopify grind to a halt, with millions of orders left unfulfilled. Consumers, who have become accustomed to cashless transactions, scramble to find alternatives. Brick-and-mortar banks face a crisis as customers rush to withdraw cash, fearing that their funds will become inaccessible. Long lines form outside banks, but without internet access, tellers cannot verify account balances or process withdrawals. Within hours, the global economy plunges into chaos. Governments attempt to intervene, but without an internet-based infrastructure, their options are severely limited. International trade comes to a standstill as financial institutions struggle to verify transactions. Without instant digital communication, businesses are unable to confirm shipments, process invoices, or coordinate supply chain logistics. The modern economy, designed to function in real time, collapses under the weight of its digital dependency. Cryptocurrency, often touted as an alternative to traditional banking, also becomes worthless. Bitcoin and other digital assets require internet access for transactions to be recorded on the blockchain. Without a functioning network, cryptocurrency wallets are useless, leaving holders unable to access their digital wealth. As the hours pass, uncertainty grows. With no way to access financial accounts or confirm transactions, people begin to hoard whatever cash they have left. Small businesses, unable to process credit card payments, revert to barter and cash-based transactions. The world, once operating at lightning speed, suddenly feels like it has returned to the pre-digital era. Supply chain chaos. The modern supply chain is one of the most intricate and interconnected systems on the planet, relying heavily on the internet for coordination. The sudden disappearance of digital communication throws global logistics into disarray. Retail giants like Amazon and Walmart, which use sophisticated online networks to manage inventory and process orders, are paralyzed. Warehouses are filled with goods, but with no way to track shipments or communicate with distribution centers, deliveries stop. Online grocery stores and food delivery services, which millions depend on, cease operations. Supermarkets begin to experience shortages almost immediately. Most stores operate on just-in-time inventory systems, meaning they only stock a limited amount of goods, expecting frequent deliveries. Without an internet-based tracking system, suppliers cannot coordinate shipments, leaving shelves empty within days. Hospitals face even greater challenges. Pharmaceutical supply chains depend on digital systems to track and distribute medication. Without real-time data, pharmacies struggle to restock essential drugs, leaving patients vulnerable. Insulin, antibiotics, and life-saving medical supplies become scarce. Gas stations also experience disruptions. Many fuel stations rely on digital payment systems, making it impossible to process transactions. Even those with physical cash find it difficult to buy fuel, as distribution networks are crippled by the inability to coordinate deliveries. Public transportation systems suffer as well, as trains, buses, and rideshare services that depend on internet-based scheduling are unable to operate. In the background, factories sit idle, unable to access digital blueprints, process manufacturing orders, or communicate with suppliers. The global economy, driven by seamless coordination between supply chains, suddenly becomes fragmented. As businesses fail to receive inventory, job losses mount. Without functioning supply chains, production halts, leading to factory closures and economic downturns. The world has become so reliant on real-time data that without it, even the most essential industries crumble. Social unrest and crime spike. With panic setting in, misinformation spreads like wildfire. In the absence of social media and news websites, rumors circulate through word of mouth, radio broadcasts, and whatever forms of communication still function. False reports about the cause of the internet blackout fuel fear, with some blaming cyber attacks, while others believe it to be a government conspiracy. Law enforcement struggles to maintain order as digital surveillance tools, used to monitor criminal activity, go offline. Facial recognition systems, online crime databases, and automated emergency response systems are rendered useless. Police departments, accustomed to relying on digital communication, find it difficult to coordinate their efforts. The blackout also creates an opportunity for criminals. With banking systems down, physical cash becomes the only viable currency, making banks, ATMs, and retail stores prime targets for looting. Businesses unable to process transactions shut down, leaving employees without work and customers without access to goods. Civil unrest begins to grow as frustration turns into desperation. Hospitals and emergency services are overwhelmed. Digital patient records, used to track medical histories and prescriptions, become inaccessible, leaving doctors struggling to provide proper treatment. Ambulance dispatch systems, which rely on GPS and internet-based tracking, are disrupted, delaying critical emergency responses. Governments attempt to reassure the public through television and radio broadcasts, but without a functioning internet, communication remains slow and inefficient. The lack of real-time information creates a vacuum, leading to growing distrust. Protest movements begin to form as citizens demand answers, but without social media, organizing large-scale demonstrations becomes more difficult. By the end of the first day, the world is in chaos. What began as a silent morning of missing notifications has spiraled into a full-blown global crisis. Without access to digital networks, societies must adapt to an unfamiliar reality, one where speed, convenience, and instant communication no longer exist. The question now is whether humanity can find a way to function without the digital backbone it has depended on for so long. 1 week without the internet, mass layoffs and job losses. The first few days without the internet sent shockwaves through the global economy, but as the week progresses, the true devastation becomes apparent. Businesses that once depended entirely on digital infrastructure find themselves unable to function. With no websites, no digital transactions, and no way to communicate with customers online, companies that built their operations around e-commerce, cloud computing, and digital marketing begin shutting down. The global workforce is in turmoil. Nearly every industry relies on the internet to some degree, but for businesses that operate entirely online, survival is impossible. Remote work becomes obsolete overnight, wiping out millions of jobs in tech, customer service, and freelance markets. The gig economy collapses as ride-sharing apps, food delivery services, and independent contractors who rely on online platforms are suddenly without income. Online content creators, influencers, and digital entrepreneurs who once made their living through streaming, affiliate marketing, and e-commerce see their entire livelihoods disappear. Retail chains that depended on automated supply chains and online order management struggle to function. Many physical stores that relied on digital payment systems find it difficult to process sales, leading to mass layoffs in the retail sector. Banks and financial institutions, unable to operate in the digital space, begin downsizing, cutting workers as financial services grind to a halt. With unemployment skyrocketing, governments rush to implement emergency measures. Some attempt to restore traditional, pre-internet ways of doing business, while others focus on stabilizing the growing economic crisis. However, with most financial records stored in cloud systems that are now inaccessible, even government intervention proves difficult. Without digital records, verifying employment histories, processing social benefits, and issuing unemployment payments become logistical nightmares. The global job market has changed forever. Some industries attempt to adapt by returning to analog methods, but the shift is slow and costly. The economic collapse triggered by the internet shutdown is not just temporary. It is a complete restructuring of how businesses and employment function in the modern world. Telecommunication breakdown. For years, digital communication has been the foundation of business, social interaction, and global coordination. In just 1 week, society is forced to adjust to a world without instant messaging, video calls, or email. The transition is jarring. Without the internet, smartphones lose much of their functionality. While basic phone calls and text messages still work in some areas, global networks struggle to keep up with the sudden increase in demand for traditional communication methods. Many mobile service providers relied on internet-based infrastructure for call routing and data management, leading to widespread disruptions. Video conferencing, once a staple of business meetings and long-distance communication, is no longer an option. Without Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Google Meet, businesses scramble to find alternative ways to connect. Office meetings return to in-person settings where possible, but for international companies, collaboration becomes nearly impossible. Email, the primary form of communication for most businesses, is now inaccessible. With no way to send documents or conduct written correspondence digitally, companies are forced to rely on physical mail and fax machines. The once forgotten technology of faxing, long considered outdated, experiences a sudden resurgence as businesses desperately seek ways to share information without the internet. Social communication takes an even bigger hit. Instant messaging apps like WhatsApp, Messenger, and iMessage no longer function. Without social media platforms, people lose touch with friends and family living in different parts of the world. The psychological impact is immense. Many experience heightened anxiety and loneliness as the ability to instantly connect with loved ones vanishes. Governments and emergency services struggle to communicate effectively. Many public service networks rely on the internet for coordination, leaving police, fire departments, and medical teams unable to share real-time information. Dispatch systems slow down, leading to delayed response times and an increase in preventable emergencies. As the week without the internet progresses, people begin to adapt to these new challenges. Businesses invest in alternative communication technologies, including satellite phones and landline networks. Some organizations attempt to create closed-loop intranets, localized networks that function independently of the global internet. While these solutions help in isolated cases, they do little to solve the larger problem. Without the internet, global connectivity is fundamentally broken. Media and news blackout. The spread of information has undergone a dramatic shift. Without Twitter, YouTube, or online news websites, people struggle to access real-time updates. The news cycle, once driven by instant reporting and user-generated content, slows to a crawl. Television and radio become the primary sources of news once again. Traditional broadcasters, who had long been losing audiences to digital platforms, experience a resurgence. Families gather around their televisions at scheduled times, waiting for updates from news anchors instead of scrolling through endless feeds of information. Radio stations see a massive increase in listenership as people turn to the airwaves for the latest developments. Newspapers, once thought to be a dying industry, make an unexpected comeback. With no internet-based news sources, print journalism regains significance. However, the return to print media comes with its own challenges. The ability to publish and distribute physical newspapers quickly is limited, meaning breaking news is often outdated by the time it reaches the public. Governments use TV and radio broadcasts to issue official statements, but without the internet, misinformation spreads rapidly. Rumors about the cause of the internet shutdown circulate, with conspiracy theories taking hold in many communities. Some believe the blackout is the result of cyberwarfare, while others blame governments for deliberately shutting down global communication. Without social media fact-checking, distinguishing between truth and speculation becomes difficult. For content creators, the internet shutdown is the end of an era. YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram influencers who built their careers on digital media are suddenly without an audience. Traditional entertainment industries, including television and film, see an increase in viewership as people search for alternatives to online content. Movie theaters, previously struggling due to streaming services, experience a revival as audiences return for in-person entertainment. The media blackout forces society to reassess how it consumes information. While some appreciate the return to slower, more deliberate news cycles, others struggle with the lack of instant updates. The shift away from digital media is not just an inconvenience, it is a complete transformation of how knowledge is shared and consumed. Rise of black market communication. As the internet shutdown continues, a new underground economy begins to emerge. Desperate for real-time communication, people turn to alternative methods of information exchange. Ham radio, once a niche hobby for enthusiasts, becomes an essential tool for communication. Operators establish networks to share news, coordinate resources, and relay messages between disconnected regions. Amateur radio stations, previously used for emergency preparedness, transform into the primary means of long-distance communication. CB radios, popularized decades ago but largely forgotten in the digital age, experience a resurgence. Truck drivers, who once relied on GPS and online logistics, turn to radio frequencies to coordinate shipments and navigate roads without internet-based maps. CB radio channels become makeshift news networks, spreading information about road conditions, supply shortages, and local developments. Pirate radio stations, illegal but effective, begin to emerge in urban areas. These unlicensed broadcasts fill the void left by online media, providing underground news updates and organizing communities. While some pirate stations aim to keep people informed, others exploit the situation by spreading propaganda or disinformation. In some regions, attempts are made to create local internet alternatives. Mesh networks, decentralized communication systems that allow devices to connect without a central provider, begin forming in tech-savvy communities. However, these networks are limited in range and effectiveness, making them an unreliable substitute for the global internet. The emergence of black market communications highlights a critical truth: humans will always find a way to stay connected. Even in the absence of modern digital infrastructure, people innovate and adapt. However, these makeshift solutions are no match for the vast, interconnected world the internet once provided. As the first week without the internet comes to an end, society is at a turning point. The shock has settled, but the consequences are only beginning. The economic collapse, communication breakdown, and media blackout have reshaped the world, forcing humanity to adapt to an uncertain future. The question now is whether civilization can rebuild, or if 1 month without the internet. Economic catastrophe. The global economy has been in a downward spiral since the first day of the internet blackout, but by the end of the first month, it has collapsed entirely. The initial stock market crashes that occurred within hours of the outage have now solidified into a full-scale financial catastrophe. With no internet to facilitate electronic trading, stock exchanges in New York, London, Tokyo, and other financial hubs remain frozen. Investors have no way to buy, sell, or track their assets, leaving trillions of dollars in limbo. Businesses that once relied on internet-based transactions are unable to process payments, leading to widespread bankruptcies and layoffs that send unemployment rates soaring to unprecedented levels. Cryptocurrency, which was once seen as the future of digital finance, has been rendered worthless. Without an internet connection, blockchain transactions cannot be verified, making it impossible for users to access or trade their digital assets. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and countless other cryptocurrencies that once held value in the digital economy are now nothing more than useless strings of code locked inside wallets that no one can access. The collapse of digital banking has further worsened the crisis, as people who stored their money in online accounts are left with no way to retrieve their funds. Governments around the world scramble to stabilize their economies, but without access to digital financial systems, their options are limited. Many begin printing physical currency again, hoping to restore confidence in cash transactions. However, the transition is chaotic. In some countries, hyperinflation takes hold as the sudden increase in paper money leads to a rapid devaluation of national currencies. Black markets begin to emerge, where essential goods are traded for tangible assets like gold, silver, and even food supplies. With international banking networks offline, global trade grinds to a near halt. Cargo ships remain stranded at ports, unable to receive payment confirmations or instructions from supply chain management systems. Airlines, which once relied on digital booking systems, struggle to coordinate flights, leading to massive disruptions in the movement of people and goods. The financial system that once facilitated instant global commerce has collapsed, leaving the world in an economic freefall with no clear path to recovery. A return to analog and pre-internet systems. With digital systems failing, societies begin turning back to older, pre-internet methods of communication and information sharing. Paper maps, once considered obsolete in the age of GPS navigation, make a comeback as people rediscover how to travel without digital guidance. In major cities, bookstores experience an unexpected revival as people seek printed materials to replace the information they once accessed online. Libraries, which had seen declining use in the internet age, suddenly become invaluable sources of knowledge, with people flocking to them in search of information that was once just a click away. The resurgence of physical newspapers marks a dramatic shift in how news is consumed. With no internet-based news platforms available, print journalism becomes the primary way people stay informed. However, without the ability to update stories in real time, news cycles slow down considerably. People no longer receive instant updates on world events, instead waiting for the next day's edition to learn about what happened. Communication reverts to methods that have been nearly forgotten. Handwritten letters become common again, with postal services struggling to keep up with the sudden surge in mail volume. In offices and government agencies, fax machines, once considered relics of the past, are dusted off and put back into use as a primary method for transmitting documents. Businesses that previously relied on email for communication must now send physical letters or rely on telephone calls, significantly slowing down operations. Governments and organizations attempt to re-establish alternative networks, but without internet-based systems, progress is slow. Some areas develop localized intranets, small-scale computer networks that allow limited digital communication within specific regions. However, these systems are rudimentary compared to the global internet, and they do little to restore the level of connectivity people once took for granted. The world is adjusting, but the process is painful, and many struggle to cope with the loss of instant digital access. Scientific and medical research stagnate. The collapse of the internet has had a devastating impact on the scientific and medical communities. Modern research relies heavily on global collaboration, with scientists sharing data and findings through digital platforms. Without internet access, these collaborations come to a standstill, severely slowing down advancements in medicine, engineering, and technology. Hospitals, already struggling with supply chain disruptions, now face even greater challenges. Digital medical records, once accessible at the push of a button, are now locked inside servers with no way to retrieve them. Doctors and nurses must rely on handwritten notes and paper files, making it difficult to track patient histories and provide accurate treatments. Medical imaging systems that depended on cloud-based storage are no longer functional, forcing hospitals to rely on outdated methods for diagnosing illnesses. Pharmaceutical supply chains have collapsed entirely, leading to shortages of critical medications. Many drugs require precise temperature controls and scheduled deliveries, both of which were managed through internet-connected systems. Without these systems, the transportation and storage of life-saving medicines become unreliable, leading to an increase in preventable deaths. Vaccines that once required digital tracking systems to ensure proper distribution are now scattered, with no centralized method of coordination. Medical research facilities that once processed massive amounts of data using cloud computing are now unable to continue their work. Clinical trials for new treatments are delayed indefinitely, as researchers cannot communicate results or coordinate studies across multiple locations. The loss of instant information exchange means that scientific progress slows to a crawl, delaying potential breakthroughs in fields ranging from cancer treatment to renewable energy development. For the first time in decades, the world faces a future where medical advancements and technological innovations are no longer progressing at the pace they once did. The internet, which had once accelerated scientific discovery, is now absent, leaving researchers isolated in their respective institutions, working without the collaborative tools they once relied on. New power struggles and geopolitical shifts. The disappearance of the internet has not only reshaped the global economy but also altered the balance of power among nations. Countries that once dominated through cyber capabilities find themselves struggling to maintain control, while those with strong offline infrastructure gain new advantages. Nations that built their economies on digital finance and online commerce suffer the most. The United States, China, and many European countries, which heavily relied on internet-driven economies, experience economic turmoil as their financial systems collapse. In contrast, nations with economies based on agriculture, natural resources, and traditional manufacturing fare slightly better, as they are less dependent on digital networks for daily operations. Geopolitical tensions rise as governments scramble to secure resources and maintain stability. With digital surveillance systems no longer functional, intelligence agencies struggle to monitor threats, leading to increased uncertainty and paranoia among world leaders. Some countries resort to more aggressive tactics, attempting to assert control over territories with valuable physical assets such as oil, food supplies, and manufacturing hubs. New alliances begin to form based on a country's ability to function without digital infrastructure. Regions that invested in alternative communication networks and self-sustaining industries emerge as leaders in this new world. Countries with strong manufacturing bases become essential players in the global economy, as physical goods regain importance over digital services. The shift in power is dramatic, redefining international relationships and altering the course of global politics. As the first month without the internet comes to an end, the world is unrecognizable. The global economy is in ruins, scientific progress has stalled, and political landscapes have been reshaped. Society has begun adapting to a world without digital connectivity, but the question remains, can civilization ever return to the way it was, or is this the beginning of a permanent new era? One year without the internet, the new global economy. A year has passed since the internet disappeared, and the global economy has undergone a complete transformation. The financial collapse that occurred in the first month has left countries scrambling to rebuild new systems of trade and commerce. With digital banking and online transactions now a thing of the past, societies have reverted to traditional economic models. Bartering has become a primary means of exchange in many parts of the world, with people trading essential goods and services instead of relying on money. Local markets have taken over where e-commerce once dominated. Farmers, craftsmen, and small business owners rely on face-to-face transactions rather than digital orders. Cash, once predicted to become obsolete in the internet age, is now the most valuable financial instrument. Governments have printed large amounts of physical currency to replace digital banking, but the transition has not been smooth. Some economies have collapsed entirely, unable to adjust to the sudden disappearance of internet-based financial infrastructure. New power players have emerged in this off-grid economy. Those with physical resources, such as land, water, food production, and manual labor, now hold the greatest influence. Corporations that once thrived in the digital space, such as tech giants and social media companies, have vanished, replaced by industries that cater to immediate survival and self-sufficiency. The wealthiest individuals are no longer those with digital assets but those who own tangible resources. The financial hubs of the world have shifted. Former economic centers like Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and major global banks have crumbled, while regions with sustainable agriculture, energy production, and essential manufacturing have gained prominence. The new global economy does not run on algorithms and high-frequency trading. It runs on direct trade, production, and resource control. The rise of decentralized technology, with no central internet infrastructure to rely on, societies have turned to alternative methods of digital communication. Decentralized technologies, once considered niche, have now become the foundation for new forms of connectivity. Local mesh networks, which allow devices to communicate without a centralized internet provider, have sprung up in cities and rural areas. These networks provide limited digital access, enabling people to share information and coordinate trade without relying on traditional online services. Private intranets have been established by corporations, universities, and governments, creating small-scale digital environments that function within specific regions. These networks resemble the early days of the Internet, where only select groups had access to information. Instead of global connectivity, people now operate within localized digital communities, exchanging data through controlled and heavily monitored systems. Peer-to-peer communication methods have also gained popularity. USB drives, hard copies of data, and offline file-sharing hubs have replaced cloud storage. Those with access to knowledge and information now hold immense power, as data is no longer freely available to the masses. Books, physical documents, and handwritten records have become valuable once again, as societies seek to preserve knowledge without relying on digital archives. While these new systems provide some level of connectivity, they are nowhere near as efficient as the global Internet once was. The world remains fragmented, with each region developing its own independent digital infrastructure. Some governments attempt to restore centralized control, while others embrace the decentralized nature of this new reality. However, one thing is clear: globalization, once powered by the Internet, has now been replaced by localism and regionalized communication, a technological dark age or a renaissance. Without the Internet, societies have been forced to redefine their relationship with technology. Some parts of the world have plunged into a technological dark age, struggling to rebuild systems that once depended on online connectivity. Businesses that relied entirely on the Internet have collapsed, and scientific research has slowed dramatically. The loss of digital collaboration has made it nearly impossible for researchers to share findings, delaying progress in medicine, engineering, and space exploration. Innovation, once driven by instant access to global knowledge, has stalled in many industries. However, in other areas, a different trend has emerged. Without the constant distraction of digital devices, some communities have experienced a cultural and intellectual renaissance. With social media gone, people have returned to reading books, engaging in face-to-face conversations, and developing real-world skills. The arts have flourished in unexpected ways, with a renewed interest in traditional craftsmanship, painting, writing, and live performances. People who once spent hours scrolling through endless content online now spend their time engaging in activities that require creativity and critical thinking. Education has undergone a radical transformation. schools that once relied on digital learning have returned to traditional teaching methods. Without search engines to provide instant answers, students are once again learning how to research using physical books and in-person instruction. Some argue that this shift has led to a deeper understanding of subjects, as learners are forced to engage with information in a more meaningful way rather than relying on quick internet searches. While some societies struggle to adapt, others find that life without the internet has allowed for greater focus, intellectual growth, and deeper connections. The question remains whether humanity will rebuild a new digital age or if this marks a permanent departure from the technology-driven world that once existed. Mental health and social changes. The psychological impact of losing the internet has been profound. In the first few months, many experienced severe withdrawal symptoms. The constant stimulation of social media, instant notifications, and online entertainment had conditioned people to expect immediate gratification. Without these digital distractions, anxiety levels spiked, leading to widespread frustration and restlessness. Over time, however, the effects have been mixed. Some people have benefited from the absence of the internet, experiencing lower stress levels and improved mental health. Without the pressures of social media, many report feeling more confident and less anxious about their personal lives. The constant comparison to others, fueled by curated online content, has disappeared, allowing people to focus on their own well-being rather than chasing digital validation. Families spend more time together, and relationships have strengthened in the absence of constant digital interruptions. On the other hand, the economic downturn caused by the internet's disappearance has created widespread suffering. The loss of jobs, financial instability, and uncertainty about the future have led to a sharp increase in depression and anxiety. Mental health services, which once relied on online resources and telemedicine, have struggled to provide support. Suicide rates have risen in some regions as people struggle to adapt to the new economic and social landscape. The younger generation, which grew up in the digital age, has been hit particularly hard. Many have never known a world without the internet, making the transition especially difficult. Social groups that were once maintained through online interactions have fragmented, leaving many feeling isolated. However, some have embraced the change, forming new communities based on face-to-face interactions and shared real-world experiences. The way people spend their time has also changed. With no online entertainment, hobbies that had been forgotten have made a comeback. Board games, outdoor activities, and hands-on crafts have replaced screen time. Book clubs, music gatherings, and community events have surged in popularity, as people seek new ways to engage with each other. While the long-term psychological effects remain uncertain, one thing is clear: humanity is undergoing a massive social shift. The internet shaped how people thought, communicated, and interacted for decades. Its absence has forced society to rethink what truly matters, whether it be relationships, personal fulfillment, or the way knowledge is shared and preserved. As the first year without the internet comes to an end, the world stands at a crossroads. Some believe the internet will never return, while others hold on to hope that a new digital era will rise from the ashes. The question remains, will humanity attempt to rebuild what was lost, or will it move forward into an entirely different future? Could we ever rebuild the internet? 1 year without the internet has pushed humanity to its limits. The world has adapted in some ways, but in others, it has suffered immensely. Governments, corporations, and technology experts have not given up on restoring what was lost. The race to rebuild the internet has begun, but the task is monumental. Without an existing infrastructure, countries must start from scratch, and not all of them are equipped to do so. Nations with independent technological resources, backup communication networks, and strong offline infrastructure stand the best chance of recovery. Others, which relied entirely on global connectivity, remain trapped in a technological standstill. Efforts to restore connectivity vary across the world. Some countries attempt to reconstruct digital networks using pre-existing infrastructure, while others experiment with alternative solutions. Satellite communication becomes a major focus, as it offers the potential for wireless global coverage without relying on physical cables. Private corporations invest in new, decentralized technologies, hoping to create systems that are more resilient to future shutdowns. The challenge is not just restoring the internet, it is ensuring that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. What would a post-internet society look like? Even if the internet is rebuilt, it may not resemble the system that once existed. A world that has functioned for a year without global connectivity will not return to business as usual. Instead, societies may embrace a more localized, secure, and self-sustaining digital structure. Instead of a singular, global web, independent regional networks might become the new standard, allowing countries to control their own digital ecosystems without being vulnerable to external threats. A decentralized, more secure internet, often referred to as Internet 2.0, becomes a real possibility. Unlike the previous web, which relied on centralized control, this new version is designed to function even if parts of it are taken down. Peer-to-peer networking, blockchain-based data storage, and advanced encryption protocols make it more resistant to cyber attacks and systemic failures. While it may lack the seamless interconnectivity of the old internet, it offers greater stability and control. For some societies, the internet as it once was may never return. Certain regions find that they function better without the constant distractions and dependencies of digital life. Others embrace hybrid solutions, integrating limited digital services while maintaining traditional communication and business practices. The future is not about rebuilding what was lost but about creating a new system that balances technological advancement with resilience. Lessons from history: how societies have recovered from major disruptions. Human civilization has faced monumental setbacks before, and history offers clues about how societies might recover from the loss of the internet. When the Roman Empire collapsed, Europe entered a period of stagnation, losing vast amounts of knowledge and infrastructure. It took centuries for societies to rebuild, but the Renaissance eventually emerged, reviving lost knowledge and fostering new intellectual and technological advancements. After World War II, countries that had been devastated by conflict underwent a period of rapid reconstruction. Through international cooperation, economic investment, and technological innovation, cities were rebuilt, economies were restored, and global trade flourished once again. The internet shutdown may be one of the greatest technological collapses in human history, but if past events have shown anything, it is that recovery is always possible. The real question is not whether the internet can be rebuilt, but whether humanity will learn from its mistakes. If the world returns to the same fragile system, history may repeat itself. But if societies take this opportunity to create a more resilient, adaptable digital infrastructure, the next generation may inherit a world where global connectivity is stronger than ever. What can we learn from this thought experiment? A world without the internet is not just a theoretical scenario, it is a wake-up call. The internet has become the backbone of modern civilization, powering financial markets, global communications, healthcare, education, and almost every aspect of daily life. This thought experiment forces us to confront a critical question: is society too dependent on digital infrastructure? The internet has brought undeniable progress, but it has also created vulnerabilities that could lead to catastrophe if a shutdown ever became a reality. The past year in this imagined world has shown how fragile modern systems truly are. Economic collapses, mass unemployment, supply chain breakdowns, and the loss of instant communication have revealed just how deeply intertwined the digital world is with physical survival. But it has also highlighted something else: the resilience of human adaptation. In the absence of the internet, societies found ways to rebuild, reconnect, and function in a completely different way. This scenario also raises an important question about preparedness. If the internet were to vanish tomorrow, would governments, businesses, and individuals know how to function? Most people have grown so accustomed to instant access to information, digital transactions, and online services that they have no backup plan for a world without it. The lesson here is clear: reliance on technology without contingency plans is a risk. Societies that prepare for alternative ways of communication, commerce, and governance will be far better equipped to handle any future disruptions. The internet is both a gift and a vulnerability. It has made life more convenient, connected, and efficient, but it has also created a system where billions of people are dependent on something they cannot control. This thought experiment is not just about what would happen if the internet disappeared, it is about how prepared humanity is for a technological reset. The question is not just whether we could survive without the internet, but whether we have the foresight to ensure that we never have to. Would the world be better or worse without the internet? The internet has shaped the modern world in ways that no other invention has before. It has connected people across continents, enabled the free flow of information, and revolutionized industries. But it has also contributed to addiction, misinformation, cybercrime, and digital dependence. If the internet were to disappear permanently, would the world ultimately be better or worse? The answer is not simple. On one hand, the collapse of digital infrastructure would force people to reconnect with the physical world. Without constant digital distractions, relationships could strengthen, real-world skills would become more valuable, and societies might develop more sustainable lifestyles. In some ways, this could be seen as a return to a more grounded, less chaotic existence. On the other hand, the loss of the internet would set civilization back decades, if not centuries. Science, medicine, and education would suffer without instant access to information. Businesses that rely on digital trade would disappear, leading to economic collapse and mass poverty. Global cooperation would be severely limited, making it harder to solve global challenges like climate change, disease outbreaks, and humanitarian crises. The world would not be better or worse without the internet, it would be fundamentally different. Some aspects of life might improve, while others would deteriorate. What this scenario ultimately reveals is that the internet itself is neither good nor bad. It is a tool, and its impact depends on how it is used. If humanity can learn to balance the benefits of digital connectivity with the need for offline resilience, it may be possible to build a future where technology enhances life without making it fragile. The greatest takeaway from this thought experiment is that while the internet may seem permanent, it is not invincible. Understanding its weaknesses, preparing for disruptions, and ensuring that societies can function with or without it may be the key to a future that is both connected and secure. Whether the internet remains or vanishes, one thing is certain: humanity will adapt,